Sometimes it can be great to escape the mundane problems of real life by watching a movie featuring much worse problems like alien invasions or out-of-control robots. But one of the reasons people love Marvel characters so much is because they're relatable and have to deal with realistic issues in addition to various fictional ones. You might be surprised how many real-world problems found their way into the fictional Marvel Cinematic Universe. Mental health. Everyone loves seeing the exciting side of being a superhero. The fancy costumes, advanced weaponry, and the action-packed fight scenes are what most of us think about when we daydream about being superheroes. But what most superhero movies don't show is the aftermath to these battles, both in terms of collateral damage and the mental health impact they have on our favorite heroes. Tony Stark is a billionaire genius in addition to being a superhero, and despite this impressive resume, he still struggles with his mental health. During Iron Man 3, we learned that although he was an integral part of saving the day, he's traumatized by the events of the Avengers. Although he tries to downplay his anxiety attacks, it's clear he's suffering from severe panic attacks and possibly post-traumatic stress disorder. Although he isn't formally diagnosed in the movie, it's clear he's suffering from mental health issues stemming from a traumatic event. We know he made carrying a nuclear weapon through a wormhole look easy, but apparently it took its toll. It can be all too easy to make superheroes seem too perfect to be real, but Tony's struggles make him appear vulnerable and help to humanize him against the crazy fictional backdrop that is the MCU. Job loss. There are many reasons why Adrian Toomes is considered one of the greatest villains in the MCU despite not having any superpowers. His humanity and the relatable nature of his origin story make him an immensely compelling character. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, we learn that Tony Stark wasn't the only character struggling with the aftermath of the Battle of New York. Adrian Toomes had a contract to handle the cleanup from the fight that was ripped away from him at the beginning of the movie. An unexpected job loss, coupled with family obligations and expenses, are sadly things many of us can relate to. The Vulture is a great example of a character who does the wrong thing for the right reasons. We hopefully don't have to explain to you why dealing in illegal vibranium weapons is a bad idea, but he does have bills to pay and a daughter to send to school. When Peter Parker confronts him asking how he could do this to his daughter, Adrian claims he did this for her because he had to keep his family afloat. Greed is a common motivation for Marvel villains, but it's harder to judge someone who just had his job ripped away from him and has a family to support. Propaganda. The Kree-Skrull War was a major comic book storyline that Marvel fans have been waiting to see on the big screen for ages. Not only was Captain Marvel the first movie in the MCU featuring a standalone female hero, but it also introduced the Skrulls and their conflict with the Kree into the MCU. Everyone knows the Skrulls are shape-shifting creatures who can replicate anyone right down to their DNA. But the movie caused us to question one thing we had always accepted about the Skrulls as fact. Carol Danvers learned an important lesson about propaganda when she discovered that the Skrulls aren't inherently evil. In fact, they're refugees whose homeworld was destroyed and have nowhere else to go. Because of the Kree spreading misinformation about the Skrulls, they're feared throughout the universe, making their quest for a new home all the more difficult. Captain Marvel takes a storyline about shape-shifting aliens and gives it a serious humanitarian twist. Security state. It probably won't shock you to hear that Captain America is a hero who frequently deals with real-world political issues. In the comic books, there have been various occasions when Steve Rogers retires as Captain America after becoming disillusioned with the actions of the government he's supposed to serve. Politics were a huge part of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and show that Steve Rogers is more than an unquestioning icon of America. In fact, the entire movie could be summed up with a quote from founding father Ben Franklin: "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." In the movie, it's revealed that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been stealthily acquiring information about the public without their knowledge or consent. They claim this is about protecting people, but as we all know, Hydra was really behind the whole thing. It's an interesting parallel to the real-world NSA, and just like Edward Snowden leaked their documents to the media, Black Widow released S.H.I.E.L.D. documents to the public. The Winter Soldier is a social commentary on the dangers of a security state. It's a classic case of who watches the Watchmen. And no, we don't mean the other group of superheroes. Warmongering. Iron Man is another Marvel character who was also created during the time of political unease. Stan Lee came up with the idea for Tony Stark during the Cold War and presented himself with a challenge. He knew people were exhausted by war, so he decided to see if he could create a likable character who owed his immense wealth to war and weapons. This was a huge part of Tony Stark's storyline in the movie Iron Man. He was forced to come face to face with his warmongering ways and learn the consequences of his actions. It was a harsh dose of reality for Tony Stark, and one which inspired his later actions and led to him becoming a superhero. It's not unusual for superhero movies to involve a lot of fighting and weapons, but rarely do we get to see the consequences of these things. Now in Iron Man, we saw Tony Stark staring down the painful reality of war and accept his part in the destruction. Isolationists. While we've seen many real-world locations featured in the MCU, there's one fictional location it seems like nobody can stop talking about. Wakanda may be full of valuable resources and advanced technology, but there are some interesting real-world ramifications to the way it conducts itself. During Black Panther, Wakanda is presented as pretty much a utopia, and it's completely closed off to the outside world. Many credit its thriving state to its isolation, but not everyone is on board. Nakia explains to T'Challa that she believes it's wrong of Wakanda not to extend its help and resources to others who are in need. It's a point of view shared by Eric Killmonger. Although he's clearly a villain who wants to incite war, he also wants to abolish the isolationist policies of Wakanda. The conflict raises interesting moral questions that we see all the time in real life. Does Wakanda have a responsibility to help others? What if it impacts the lives of Wakandan citizens to render aid beyond their borders? It raises the question of a global society, and it's one without easy answers. Although we saw T'Challa make serious changes at the end of the movie, only time will tell what the ramifications will be. Trauma. Iron Man 3 focused on the mental anguish Tony Stark experiences, but we've seen evidence that he's not the only character impacted by his past. During Avengers Age of Ultron, Scarlet Witch displayed some frightening abilities which drove home how much the Avengers are haunted by what they've been through. Scarlet Witch used her powers to trap our heroes in nightmares of their trauma and paranoia, which impact their actions in the MCU. Black Widow is portrayed as a hardened assassin, but we learned that she has not been able to forget her past. Captain America still feels anguish over his losses, and even the God of Thunder is haunted by terrifying visions. Reliving these past traumas in Age of Ultron shows audiences that even if they're not having panic attacks, it doesn't mean these heroes don't have real human emotions about what they've been through. War. It's true that it's hard to display the true horror of war in a movie, especially one that's rated PG-13, but Marvel Studios has found a way to tackle aspects of multiple real wars in the MCU, which brings a serious sense of realism to their movies. Now, of course, we all know actual Nazis never obtained an Infinity Stone to help them develop new and terrifying weapons, but their existence is still a relatable real-world element. During Iron Man, Tony Stark finds himself an unwilling part of the war in Afghanistan. In the United States, he may have near limitless power and resources, but down in the trenches, he's the same as everyone else. Oh, okay, maybe no one else could have made a super suit out of stuff that they found in a cave, but we never said it was 100% accurate. Parenting. We all know parenting is a tough job, and there's more than one correct way to raise a happy, healthy, and productive child, but then there's the Thanos parenting method, which combines aspects of fiction with some disturbing real-world dynamics. Consider the relationship between Gamora and Thanos that we saw in Avengers Infinity War. She thinks the way that he treated her and Nebula when they were growing up is disgusting and knows that he must be stopped at all costs. Yet, when she believes he perished, she's clearly devastated. It's not uncommon for people who have been abused to have complicated relationships with their abusers. And we also learn that Thanos loved Gamora in his own horrible way. It doesn't justify any of the horrible things he's done to her, but he's capable of having and expressing emotions. People in the real world often struggle with feelings of love, loyalty, and responsibility, even when they're in an emotionally unhealthy relationship. Women's rights. While Carol Danvers dreamed of being a combat pilot, she wasn't allowed to fly in battle because she was a woman. It wasn't until 1976 that the US Air Force allowed women to enter their pilot training program, and even then, they weren't allowed to fly during combat missions. Carol Danvers couldn't achieve her dream, not because she wasn't skilled, but because of rules restricting what she could do based on her gender. And then we have the flashbacks of her childhood where her father displayed different rules for boys and girls. There was even a scene in Captain Marvel when a random man tells Carol she should smile, a frustrating experience many women can relate to, and although she was told to smile, Jan Rog often told her to control her emotions and not display any sort of unattractive anger. Prior to the release of the movie, detractors complained that actress Brie Larson didn't smile enough in the movie trailers, but more rational fans were quick to point out that nobody complains when male heroes aren't permanently grinning. This even resulted in some fantastic photoshops revealing what it would look like if male heroes smiled a little more. Don't they look much prettier? What do you think about the way Marvel Studios tackled these real-world issues in their films? Do you think that they could have been handled better, or do you think that they were portrayed realistically? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. Bye for now!